I have an attorney, I am insured, and so I want all my T's crossed, my I's dotted. So I make sure everybody's.
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Diane Crespo with me from Organized Mess. Diane, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dan. This is cool.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. I love this. So one of the awesome things I love about this podcast, I get an opportunity to talk with people that do all kinds of crazy things. So the name Organized Mess, I love it. Um, so
Thanks.
so let's jump right into it. What is Organized Mess?
I'm a professional home and office organizer. I started as a contract organizer and I thought I could do this myself. So I started my own business a little over a year ago, and it's been so much fun. Like, my background is in mental health counseling. I've always loved helping people. I've been in customer service, retail. I'm sure we'll talk about all of that because it's been a crazy career path for me. But I've always loved organizing. I've been type A my whole life. So I started from there, and then I knew I would burn out being in mental health. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So it's like full circle for me, because a lot of my clients suffer from like ADHD, depression, like a lot of clutter goes hand in hand with those diagnoses. So I was like, I still get to help people, but then I also get that like tangible um, result, because you don't always get that as a mental health counselor. So I love it. I just love helping people.
How did you actually start your business? What was that process like? How much of a pain was that?
They don't always tell you. You think like, oh, I have this hobby and I can do it. And you absolutely can. But you just have to surround yourself with the right people. I got into a networking program with other entrepreneurs. And so they were on Facebook and local. So I could go to meetings and meet up with other people in the same development stage as I was, but also like in like more experienced, more seasoned entrepreneurs that could give you like all of the insight, because you have to set up your LLC and you need like a bank account and so much, your domain, your website, so many things. And you don't always have to start with all of that when you start your own business, but being organized, I wanted everything, all my ducks in a row.
To have an organization business, you kind of have to be a little bit organized.
Right, exactly.
Let
I
me
have
ask.
to present organized, of course, because I can't be like, well, I don't have a business card. Well, I don't have this, because even though I'm starting out, it doesn't sound like I'm very organized if I didn't have all of that stuff put in place.
When I was speaking with another professional, one of my, I think it was one of my nonprofit founders. I don't know
Hmm.
that the video has gone live yet, but she was talking about essentially bartering.
Okay.
Actually, it was the founder of Stevens Wings. That was the person. She was talking about bartering different things. So this person needed help with, maybe grant writing, and I can offer website design. Did you encounter any of that, or were you did it yourself, where you pay people? What was that like for you?
I mostly did it myself. From being a career counselor prior, I know how to write resumes. So I had my own resume website. So I knew how to build my own website. These platforms make it so easy, which is really nice. And there's always help if you're not sure. And YouTube makes everything that much easier too. So I had a little bit of experience doing stuff like that. So I was like, I'm going to try and do what I can do on my own. And then it was funny because one of my hairdresser was like, listen, I paid for this social media class, and I'm going to tell you all about your Instagram and what needs to change. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. So we've talked about bartering services and such. So yeah, it's definitely a thing, especially like when you're in a great community. Like, I'm in St. Pete, Florida. So the community here is just amazing. I love it so much. There's a lot of that. Whatever you need, there's somebody there to help you out.
Sticking with the beginning of your company,
Sure.
why organizing? You said it sounded like a hobby of yours, or a passion of yours, but let's dive a little deeper on that. Why organization?
I love everything tidy and orderly. I think it came from when I was a kid. My parents always said, you know, this is what I'm an only child. So it was like, this is what you have. If you don't take care of it, you don't get any more. So like, I was very particular. Like, I keep things in little baggies and everything looked pristine all the time. I knew where everything was. crayons in alphabetical order, color orders, my CD collection. Like now I'm dating myself, but like I would go, I'm one of the older cousins, so I would go to my little cousins' houses and like make them organize first before we started playing. They must have loved me. I had to have been a favorite.
Yeah, it's funny talking about CDs. I remember having, the big towers, it would be like, it would hold two columns of 50 or whatever it was. And I
Yeah, we
remember
had like,
having, this particular band. And for me, it was in the order in which the album was released.
oh, see, I love that because when I do people's like bookcases, I'm like, okay, do you want it like in color order and look really pretty? Do you want it by type? Like, my religion books and then, my nonfiction, fiction, or do you want like by author, alphabetical or title? Like, there's so many options. I get so excited.
So in getting started with your business, how did you decide to turn this passion into a business? What was that like? Because I mean, honestly, I don't think of hiring someone to organize stuff for me. So it seems like you have a very niche kind of profession. How did
I
you decide
do.
to go that road? That exiting from being a career counselor or a mental health professional into organization. How did that transition happen?
I grew up in New Jersey. So did my husband, and we moved to Florida because of the weather. We just love it so much. And that was my time where I was like, I had to find a job, clearly. And I had started as an advisor in higher ed because it was hard to find a career counseling position then. And so I went from higher ed to part-time as a contract worker as an organizer because there was an organizing company that was pretty local that was looking for organizers. And I was like, now's my chance. So I would do it like on the weekends or evenings, or I would use my PTO. And then when I started using up my PTO, I was like, okay, now it's time to switch. So
I love these. I love when I stumble across these careers, these occupations that I had no idea they existed. When I spoke with Devin, she was a board game writer, and hearing, that board game writing was a thing. And
it's so cool.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and I hear you talk about your story, and I think, okay, an entrepreneur creating their own organization business. Okay, but then you let this out of the bag, and you say there are companies looking for organizers. I'm
Right,
thinking, what?
exactly. I know there are a bunch. I'm a solo um organizer, but yes, there are plenty of organizing companies out there that have teams.
How do you get your clients? How does that unfold? Are people actually looking for professional organizers? Is it word of mouth referrals? How does that come to be?
Majority is word of mouth, of course. I do a lot of networking because a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I don't understand." They think that I clean. And I'm like, no, that's the furthest thing. I don't even clean my own house. So yeah, it's thankfully Netflix put out the home edit. And so people are starting to like understand a little bit, but not everybody. It's not on everyone's radar. So it's nice to like show my Instagram and say like, here are some projects that I've worked on. And then they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So I can make it look really pretty, or we need it to be just very functional. And it all depends on where my clients are at.
I was speaking with a professional declutterer several weeks ago. I don't think, no, that video definitely has not gone live yet. So I was talking to her a few weeks ago, and it seems like for her business, she has a mix of like people downsizing,
Right.
people like estate sales, like people exiting the house completely.
Yep.
She also did something kind of like what you're describing. If someone needs help in their home office or whatever, she does that too. But it sounds kind of like you're more focused on that people, they need that organization in the space they're currently residing in, not necessarily where they're leaving their house or something like that. Is that a fair assessment?
The range of products that organizers do does vary. So a lot of them do help with moves. That's something that I don't because I'm on my own and it takes a very long time. By the time I get a phone call for a move, it's way too late. So now I'm just packing boxes, where if you want to hire an organizer for a move, I would definitely suggest months in advance so that they can come in, set up a plan so everything is actually organized, color coded. You know where everything is. You can get an inventory on like Excel, like in a spreadsheet of all of your things. You could just search it. So in case you don't have time to unpack right away, things like that. And then also, what I do is settle-ins, move-ins. So I'll be on the receiving end of the move and help you get situated into your new house. But yes, so it's different. There's so many different. So like you mentioned, there's decluttering. where a lot of my older clients have tons of paperwork that we don't necessarily need these days anymore. And then there's, moms who are expecting that get all of these gifts, and a lot of stuff that you get from your baby shower isn't needed right away, like the sippy cups and things like that. So just helping them with all that overwhelm and all that stuff. We're in a consumer society, so everybody's just like constantly buying and buying and buying, and not necessarily like getting rid of or recycling or passing things on so much, because everybody has access to everything that we need. Like, it's so hard for like gift giving these days. So we even offer like gift cards, and you can gift a session to somebody, which is really nice.
When you first talked about being on the receiving end when people are moving into their house, I immediately thought of other life circumstances where people might utilize your services. And my first thought was, and you mentioned this, when you're expecting a child. Now, are there any other life circumstances where it would be helpful to have someone like you to come in and help out?
Unfortunately, sometimes with deaths in the family, it helps a lot because the grief is just so hard. And sometimes it's easier to have somebody else who's detached to just kind of go through your things and be there for you, and you know, just give us a little guidance. I want to keep this, I don't want to keep that. And then we can kind of donate things, stuff like that. Or, if it's a parent and now they have their house, like you mentioned, estate sales, things like that. So there's those circumstances. There's also like COVID was a big one. That was a huge circumstance where people were just like living in their stuff, especially like the older generation. They were like, okay, I can't move that much, so I just need somebody to come and like clean up all this excess. So that was a lot of my work in the early stages of COVID, or right after, I should say.
I can imagine that because everyone's now they need a home office. They need to kind of find space to make a home office for something like that. I could see that being a huge thing for you.
Exactly.
When working with people, how do you estimate how long a project's going to take? How do you what are your parameters? How do you figure that out?
When a client will contact me for the first time, we'll either set up like a free Zoom consult, or I'll go and I'll visit the home, and we'll figure out what the project entails. So if it entails purging, then we set up a plan to purge, because I think everybody thinks like it's going to happen 1, 2, 3, especially because TV makes it seem like that, but it really is a process and in stages. And what it looks like is I'm looking at the project. So whether it's we need to purge first, that's a stage or two, because it also takes the client's energy and time as well when it comes to purging. And then when it's time to put away, that's more on my end where I can work on my own. And that would be like the next day or so, or the following week, or whatever it is, to then set up zones and figure out where everything's going to belong and function for that family. So it'll be like temporary sometimes, and then have like, temporary labels, things like that, so they know where their stuff is. And then checking back in and seeing like, okay, is this working? What is working? What's not? Because everybody has a different organizing style. So even those people who feel like they're completely disorganized, it's really just how do you find your stuff? So that's like the biggest hurdle for me, is like figuring out people's organizing styles.
Let's talk about education. I'm pretty
Sure.
sure I know the answer to this, but it seems like to do what you're doing, you don't necessarily need any specific education. You don't need a degree in organization or anything like that.
No, you don't. And if there was one, that's probably what I would have went to college for. I was educated through the company that had hired me at first as a contract employee. So that was really nice, because there is a skill set that needs to be learned. You have to understand different, like I said, different types of organizing styles, because what works for me won't necessarily work for somebody else. So
Let's
it
hang on
doesn't
that for a
matter.
second. So, how
Yeah.
can you learn about different organizing styles? Are there like LinkedIn learning courses or Coursera courses or Google? What how do you find those?
Yes. So there are so many other organizers out there that do like classes. I'm certified with Cass from Clutterbug. She designates everybody into a different like Clutterbug um, bug type or organizing type. And it's really cute and it's really helpful. And you can get certifications through like NAPO, the National Association of Professional Organizing. It can get a little pricey, but it's not necessary, which is nice. And they also, like, I just like I never liked school. But then once I went back to school as an adult to continue my education, I just love learning now. So what's fun is they do have a lot of courses that you can take. So let's say you have a client that wants to be a minimalist, but they have a lot of stuff. And you're like, okay, well, I don't know much about minimalism. They have courses for you to take so that you can learn what you need to learn and see what will work for what clients. So I love that. I'm constantly learning new things.
When you first started, you got your very first client. How did that work for you? Was it a friend? Was it, an ad on the internet? How did you get your very first client?
It was with the company that I work for. So they had like a home base and they had set me up with a client, which was really nice and easy. And then my own client with my new business was through word of mouth. So that was nice.
Okay. Now, how often does this
Yeah.
happen? Now, obviously, word of mouth is a big thing you said, but how often do you get repeat customers where they used you once and 3 months later, a year later, they come back to you? How often does that happen?
Pretty regularly. So I have a membership program actually, because then we give discounted rates because they're on the calendar. And sometimes people just don't have time, like doctors, lawyers, they're busy with other things, their schedule's jam-packed, other entrepreneurs, like you're busy doing everything else. And so it's just easier for somebody to come once a month, once a week, to just come and put everything away again. So it gets faster and faster because I'm so used to the homes that I like know where everything goes because we've set up a pretty easy system. So, and then sometimes it's one and done, they just want their pantry to look beautiful. You set it up and it functions. And so they're like, okay, I just needed that reset. And then they're good to go. But then maybe they want like their laundry room done or something else. So, I get called back a few times and then people come over and they see the space and they're like, oh my gosh. And they're like, oh, you have to call Diane, so that's usually how it works. It's a mix.
Okay. So here's one for you. So I don't like a lot of stuff. Like physical stuff, I
Right.
don't like it. I don't like the clutter. I like a nice
Okay.
open space. My work area tends to be a little more of like organized chaos. I know where everything is, but to someone that's just kind of walking by, it's like, I don't know where anything is. I know where it is, but they don't. Now,
Right.
digitally, I am a mess.
Okay.
I'm very organized, but I have everything everywhere, copies of stuff. And so do you ever do digital organization or is all of your stuff in the physical world?
It's mostly in the physical world. I can do digital. I'm not super techie, but yes, like if you have copies of copies of copies, that is something that I can definitely sit down and clean out. And I totally understand you. But that's where my name came from too. You're like, it's an organized chaos. So like it's literally like when you walk into my house, it's not picture perfect all the time because we all have to live. But I know where everything is. Like everything has a home.
I love that. Everything has a home. I love that. Diane, one thing I like to do when I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, their business. So obviously we were talking about your business organized mess, but if there's something else you'd like to discuss, I'd like to open the floor up to you.
Ooh, okay, yeah. So right now, I am starting on, or I've started on working with closets, which I absolutely love. So I'm partnered with a few closet companies, and what happens is, people have a new build, and then when they put that closet in, it's gorgeous, but then whoever constructed the closet didn't take into consideration what the person might have had. So maybe they have 70 pairs of shoes and now I only have 4 shelves to put those shoes on. So what I like is that I get to partner with the closet companies and they do all the hard and heavy lifting, but I get to go in, take all the measurements, figure out, help the client purge, figure out what's now going into their brand new beautiful closet. And then I know like how many like long hanging sections we need, how many shoe sections we need. Do they want things in bins and not hung up? Things like that. So that is so much fun because then when I get to put everything away in the closet, it makes sense.
I am going to hang on that for a second, actually, because when we moved into our house quite a while ago, it looked like we had one of those professional closet installations where, it was yeah, the certain sizes for different things and whatever. And I'm sure it worked for the people that lived here before us. did not work so much for us. So how often does
Right.
that happen where people move into a house and there's that closet that just this does not work. We need to do something about this. How often do you get pulled into something like that?
Very often. Especially because in Florida, like I'm from the Northeast and we have basements and attics and all of this storage space. And here, I don't know, even in the new construction, they don't consider any of that. So like closets are smaller and it's really nuts to me. But yeah, so it happens pretty often. So then you end up having to have that discussion of, okay, you might not have wanted to purge, but if you don't want your closet to look overwhelmed and overstuffed, then you have to.
I meant to ask this earlier. What about like any kind of organizing agreement? Do you deal with contracts? Do you have someone that writes up the contracts for you? Do you do that? What does that look like?
Yes, I have an attorney. I am insured, and so I want like all my T's crossed, my I's dotted. So I make sure that everybody's good to go, that they feel comfortable with me because I am going into people's homes and touching all of their personal things. And I don't want anybody to worry that if something gets broken, that there's going to be an issue or that something's going to be taken because that would never happen.
For your insurance, is that just like a general liability insurance as a
Yes,
company? Okay. And
correct. Yeah.
I have zero knowledge of this. Do all insurance companies typically offer that insurance, or do you have to pick specific firms? What is that like?
I think it depends on where you're located because I did not go with the company that I typically would have gone with. So yeah, I think it's only like specific ones that offer that.
That's awesome information. That is good to know for anyone that's
Yeah.
looking to start a similar business.
Yes.
Diane, it's been absolutely awesome having you on. Time we discussed and we learned what it's like to be the founder of Organized Mess and a professional organizer.
Yes. This has been so fun. Thank you so much.